Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live video. And I am coming to you from Mendham, New Jersey, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey, and about an hour west of New York City. And I'm just going to show you quickly a card today that I made with the Calming Camellia. I'm going to say it wrong, Camellia. I want to call it Camilla, and I don't know why I keep calling it Camilla, but it's Calming Camellia stamp set, which is one of the pretty stamp sets from the current celebration brochure. Hey, Bree and Bonnie and Jackie, I'm glad you're here today. Thanks for hopping in and saying hello. And again, it's a very simple card actually, but I thought it turned out really pretty, and I love the look of this stamp set. And I think you could do this one easily in any color that you like. So if you don't like the soft seafoam that I've used on it, you definitely can do kind of whatever color scheme you want to use with it. And I think it would look really pretty on vanilla as well. So whatever your favorite color scheme is, definitely go ahead and try it. So hey, Barbara and Debbie and Elise, I'm glad you're here as well. So this is the Calming Camellia stamp set. And again, if I say Camilla, I apologize up front. I'm going to try Camellia. I've said it like 100 times in my head, and I know I'm going to say it wrong. So, hey, Jeannie, I'm glad you're here. And, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Thanks, Bonnie. So this is the stamp set, and it is available for free with an order of $300 or greater placed during celebration, or a party that totals $300 or greater during celebration. So if you have an interest in setting up an online party, I'm happy to give you a host code to see if you can collect up $300 in orders. It's actually pretty easy to do during celebration, and we'll see if we can get you this stamp set. It's a beautiful set. Again, it's a host exclusive only during celebration, which ends on February 28th. So this is the stamp set. Again, it's got the really pretty floral image, the pretty greenery image, and then some really nice sentiments, pretty sentiments. And then there's just sort of a little accent, I don't know, swirly piece. I guess we'll just call it that. So hey, Danette, glad you're here as well. So that is the stamp set we're using today. And a couple of other things that I used on the card is, oh, I almost dropped everything. I used the Encircled in Beauty dies, and actually it's the largest regular circle, well, largest sort of scallopy circle here. This is the die that I used. Hey, Marilyn and Nancy, thanks for joining. Glad you liked my card. And then I also used the messages die, and I just used this little opening in the messages die to cut out my sentiment. So again, this is one of those dies that it actually will cut and stamp. There are stamp sets that coordinate with it, and you can stamp a whole set of sentiments, die cut a whole set of sentiments, and have them all ready to go. Or you can use it like I do, and you can die cut and stamp just little individual sentiments, fit them in the opening on a smaller piece of paper, and then die cut them. That's how I use it most often, just because I'm not organized enough to have a whole bunch of cards that need all those sentiments all at one time. And I don't have a good way to store them otherwise I lose things too easily. Also, you probably may or may not have noticed it. It's a little bit difficult to see probably on the video, but I did emboss the background of the card with the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So we're going to use that on the background of the card as well. Okay, a couple things before we get going. Today, which is Tuesday, depending on when you're watching this, you may not see this till Wednesday, but Tuesday is the last day of my double reward points ordering bonus for kicking off the new catalog. So get your orders put in today, and you're going to get double reward points from me. My reward points, you get one for every $50 in merchandise that you order in an order. So 1 point for a $50 order, 2 points for a $100 order, 3 points for a $150 order. And this week I was offering double points. So basically you're going to get 2 points for every $50 order, and you're going to earn a free celebration item from Stampin' Up. So double bonus. All right. So that I've got going on through the end of the day today, Tuesday, the 11th of January. So hey, Julie and Penny, thanks for joining. And then just wanted to remind you about the All Together new collection of products that'll be available from Stampin' Up starting on February 1st. These are available for demonstrators to pre-order now. It's a really great set of stamps, dies, coordinating designer series paper, and some awesome new blends. Yay! There's a one price and one item number for the entire collection if you're interested in ordering that. Otherwise, you can always order things individually as well. So the bundle is available, the individual stamp set, the individual dies, the paper, and then the blends. So blends are going to be great for skin tones, hair colors, all those kinds of things. So when we definitely needed to expand our blends selection. So I'm happy that they're here. Hey, Jerry, glad you're here as well. Okay, so let's get started on the card. So first things first, I got the Calming Camellia, the biggest flower image from that stamp set, and I've got it on a block here, and I've got soft seafoam ink, and I'm just going to ink and stamp this all over the piece of basic white cardstock that I have laying here in front of me. The cardstock should measure, if I've cut it correctly, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Yeah, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it should be the full size of a card front. If I've measured it incorrectly, we can always chop it down or get a new piece if I cut it too small. So, all right. So got inking this up again. Just going to do this, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times, sort of randomly across the piece of basic white cardstock that I've got here. Sometimes these stamp sets that are a little more detailed, and I don't know if this one's officially called a distinctive stamp set or not, but sometimes if you have an overly inky ink pad, which this one seems to be kind of in a good place when it comes to inking these, sometimes you can end up with splotches and kind of globs of ink and things filled in that you don't necessarily want filled in with ink. If you take a sponge dauber and actually ink up the image, then take your sponge dauber and run and tap it lightly on your ink pad, and then take the just take the sponge dauber and kind of dauber all over the image before you stamp it. It really evens out the ink and gives it a nice, I think, a nice stamped image. So if you have trouble with this, I don't know, like I said, the distinctive stamps I know tend to be a little bit more of a problem with that. So this one may not give you trouble. It may or may not, depending on how inky your ink pad is. But if you have trouble with it and don't like the look of it and it's giving you big globs of ink, try the sponge dauber trick. So, all right. Next thing I did is I took the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder, and I'm going to go ahead and just put the paper in here. If you did not know this, all of Stampin' Up's, or I don't know if all, most of Stampin' Up's embossing folders have a little straight line across the bottom of it with the Stampin' Up logo, and that actually will help you to line up your paper straight in the embossing folder. So if you line it up even with the line, you know that you're going to be straight in the embossing folder. And if it doesn't matter, this one doesn't matter a whole lot that it's exactly straight in there. But if you want to make sure that it is, if it's something where it's lined, like the pine, the one that's I guess we don't have the tree one. It looks a little weird when it's wonky, but any of them that it matters that it's lined up straight, just line up your paper with that little line at the bottom. And then one other thing with the 3D embossing folders, these actually do work with any standard die cutting machine. You can use your bottom platform or plate, whatever it's called with your machine. And then Stampin' Up! Has this cool, it's called a specialty plate. And this comes with the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, so it's part of the standard cutting plates that come with it. If you don't have the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, you can purchase this plate individually for $10 and is well worth the purchase because you will get really nice embossing with it if you use it. So, hey, Diane, glad you found me. So yay. So, all right. So use your regular platform, put your paper inside your embossing folder, the 3D embossing folder, put it directly on the platform, and then use the gray plate over the top of it, and you're going to get a nice embossed image. So I'm going to go over here to the side here and do my embossing. And I have my cut and emboss machine set up off to the side so that I don't wiggle, hopefully, too much on the table, because I know that can make you a little seasick if you're watching that, and the table is wiggling all over the place. All right, so we have got an embossed card front now. So again, I don't know how well it shows up on the video. I can definitely see it here in my hand, but you may not be able to see it very well in the video, especially since it's white on white. So my original card was one of my standard top fold cards. This one is your standard book fold card base. So this one is actually cut to 8 1/2 by 5 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. My original card base was cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. But you can use whichever is your preferred card base. I prefer the top fold ones, but I know a lot of people prefer the book fold, so you definitely can use either one with this particular card. And this is thick basic white cardstock that I am using as the card base. If you don't have the thick basic white cardstock, I almost dropped my paper. Hopefully I didn't get glue all over the edge of it. You definitely need to get some if you like using white card bases. It makes a huge difference. The regular basic white cardstock is nice for stamping and die cutting and that sort of thing, but the card base, if you try to do a card base out of it, kind of are a little floppy. So the thick basic white is much closer to the thickness of the regular cardstocks that Stampin' Up! Has. So I think you'll be much happier if you go ahead and get that and use that as your card base instead of the regular basic white. So, all right. Then I'm just going to do, again, a soft seafoam inking of the Camellia image, the Calming Camellia image. And I'm just going to stamp it again on basic white cardstock. This one we are going to be doing a little die cutting with it, so I want to make sure that it's up high enough that I'll be able to get the die cut done, but it doesn't need to cover the entire piece of the paper because the die is going to be chopping a little bit of it off. All right, so I think we got a reasonable image there. Let me double check my die to make sure that I didn't get it down too low on the paper. You know what? I think we're going to flip it over and try it again. As I was stamping it, I went, you know, I think that looks awfully low. And I think I'm going to end up with it not being in a space where I want it to be. So let me try it again and see if I do a better job of aiming. And if I don't, then we'll just go with whichever one looks the best. So hopefully this one's a little bit better. What I was trying to do is spare a little bit at the top so that my sentiment would still fit on here. And I think I got it this time around. All right, so let me close up this ink pad and set that aside before I make a mess. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take pale papaya ink and a sponge dauber, and I'm just going to add a little bit of color to the flowers on here. So I just kind of lightly tapped it on my ink pad, and I'm going to do a little bit of a swirl over here on my scrap paper just so that I don't end up with a big glob of really dark ink. And then I'm just going to sort of just, I don't know, almost like you're painting the ink on. And again, start with it lighter. You can always add more color. If you start and get it too dark, it's awfully hard to take the color away. So that's always the best thing that I can recommend when you're doing anything like this where you're adding color to your project is always start with it lighter and then add another layer of color on rather than getting a dark glob of something and then being sad because you're having to start over and restamp everything. So, all right. Gonna do a little bit down here on this piece of the flower. So, hey Carol, glad you're joining. Thanks for hopping in today. And again, it doesn't need to be perfectly done, just because it's a sort of an artsy image, and a lot of it's already covered in green ink, so you can't really tell a whole lot. That there's a ton of color there. I just sort of wanted to give it a little hint of color, if that makes sense. All right, then in the center of the flowers, I'm going to add a little bit of So Saffron ink, and it's the same process that we did with the pale papaya. I'm just going to come in with the sponge dauber and then just sort of go down in the middle of the flower where I want the color to be, and just add a little bit of So Saffron ink down in the middle of there. And then I think I'll go ahead on this one up here and just add a little So Saffron ink there, and maybe a little bit over there, and I think we'll call that good. So again, it doesn't have to be perfectly done, just because it's kind of an artsy image and it's supposed to look a little, you know, not supposed to look perfect. So there. I'm going to add a little bit more pale papaya because I feel like I missed a big spot over there. And that's all for the image. I mean, it's super, super simple. So all you need to do is stamp it, add a little bit of color with a sponge dauber, die cut it, and it's done. So, all right, so I'm going to grab this die, which again is from the Encircled in Beauty dies. It's the largest one of the circles here. And I'm going to take this and run it over to my die cutting machine. Again, I'm cutting a little bit of the stem off the bottom. And there are going to be all sorts of little fun dots and things, but we'll fling them out of here really quickly. So let me get the die cutting done over here off to the side. Hopefully y'all are enjoying your Tuesday. I almost said Friday, good heavens. It's freezing here in New Jersey. We did get some snow last week. Kids had a school day or a snow day from school on Friday, so that's always fun. They enjoyed it. We were supposed to get some freezing rain on Sunday evening, and my older daughter was so hoping that she was going to get to skip school again on Monday for the freezing rain, but I was a little glad that that didn't end up happening. All right, so there we've got our die cut, and a couple little pieces stayed in, but most of them really came out on my scratchy old cutting plate. So, all right, just using fingernails, or you can take a little pokey tool if you have that and prefer that. But mine works well. It just kind of ran my fingers over the back of it and everything popped out. So it's cold in South Carolina. Boy, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's been really chilly up here. So, all right. So I'm going to take this and use Stampin' Dimensionals. Again, these are my little Stampin' Dimensionals that I have chopped in half already. And just going to place them here around the back. Put, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them on here. And stick that to the card front. And this is a pretty quick card today. I don't know. So I'm glad y'all like it. Like I said, it's really, really easy and really pretty. At least I thought it was pretty. All right, so I'm going to try to get this centered and a little bit slid up to the top. But again, if you prefer it in the middle, you can definitely do that. But I put it up a little bit to the top. Next thing is we've got the sentiment. So let me get this die set out of the way. And again, I've left a little piece down here. This piece was about 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it was about half of the half sheet that I did. So about 1/4 of a sheet of cardstock that I used, basic white. And I've got Versamark ink and the Happy Birthday sentiment. Oh, I love the stamp set too. Like I said, the sentiments are really pretty on it. I think the images are beautiful on it. So, overall, it's a great stamp set. So, all right, so Versamark ink, and I'm stamping it on basic white cardstock. And then we're going to take a little bit of the gold embossing powder. And again, I'm going to use the brass butterflies so you can, as the little accent pieces. So if you prefer copper or silver or anything else, you can definitely use that. I don't know, I think gold and the brass look nice together. So that is what I tend to lean towards, but definitely any of the metallics you can mix with it. All right, so I've got a few little flecks here of the embossing powder that I'm trying to get off to make sure I don't end up with anything embossed that I don't want embossed. And I'm going to close this up so that I don't blow the embossing powder everywhere. And then I'm going to pull over my heat tool. So the Stampin' Up! Heat tool, again, if you've heard me, you've probably heard me say this 100 times, but it has 2 settings on it. There's a level 1 setting for drying. So if you're doing things like watercoloring or something like that and you want it to dry a little faster, you can use the level 1 setting. And the level 2 setting is for heat embossing, so that goes a little bit, or that gets a little bit hotter, so it actually will melt the embossing powder on here. All right, I think we're probably ready. And then I'm going to turn this. I just blew Stampin' Dimensional covers all over the place with the heat tool. And then, as you can see, it slowly starts to get smooth and shiny, and that means that it's done. And you want to turn it off once it all turns smooth and shiny so that you don't accidentally burn your embossing powder, which you can do. And so once it's done, it should be kind of a smooth, shiny look to it. And then I'm going to grab my Messages die. And again, because this is just a scrap of cardstock, I don't necessarily care too much about the extra pieces on it. So I'm just going to take this and place it around my sentiment, and then I'm going to do some die cutting. So just going to run it through the die cutting machine just as it is. You don't have to have the full sheet of paper underneath it in order to run it through the die cutting machine. It still works just as well this way. So hang on 1 second, I'll be back. Hopefully. So, all right. Just trying to make sure that it's centered and hopefully straight. That's the main thing. And I'm running it through the die cutting machine. And the larger dies especially do kind of make a lot of noise when you run them through, so don't panic about that. It's just how the cutting machine works. And then when you're done, you end up with a die cut sentiment and a few extra pieces. So got our sentiment all ready to go. And we'll stick that on the card front and add a couple of butterflies and we're going to be all done. So I did use Stampin' Dimensionals to adhere the sentiment to the card front. And because I'm putting it onto the circle, I wanted to stay away from the very edges of the die cuts just because the die cut is going to hang over the edge of the circle a little bit. And I didn't want it to be stuck on the card front and then have kind of a weird bow look to it. So I just put a couple of them right here in the center. And then I'm just going to center this and hopefully get all the gunk off of it. I seem to have made a mess here. Again, trying to center it, put it down near the bottom, but center it side to side. So that's my hope in doing it, is that I've got it fairly centered on there. And then I'm going to grab a couple of the little brushed brass butterflies, and got one of the larger ones that I think I'm going to stick right up here by the flowers. And I guess I can do another larger one down here too. I was trying to decide if I wanted to do a larger or a smaller, but went ahead and did the larger one, and then take one of the smaller ones and stick it over here on the edge of the sentiment. There we go. And that's really it for the card front. So it's super simple, just a little bit of Stampin', a little bit of embossing, and a little die cutting, and it's done. So yeah, I think it definitely would make a nice sympathy card as well. So, you know, like I said, I feel like the stamp set, and again, if the colors that I used aren't your favorite ones, it's really easy to change it up and do whatever colors you do prefer on it, because they can, you know, you can almost make it any colors. So any colors that you think would be pretty as a flower. And I was looking for something a little bit softer on this one. I'd considered doing it in maybe a darker blue or a purple or something like that, but then kind of decided I wanted the softer look with it instead. So that's what I went with. So again, I've got soft seafoam ink and the Calming Camellia, the larger flower image, and I'm just going to stamp it here on the edge of the piece of basic white cardstock. And that will be all. Just adhere that to the inside of the card base with some Stampin' Seal, and we'll be all done with the card. So I am going to post all the details for this project on my blog tomorrow, which is stampwithamyk.com. Oop, I got glue stuck on my finger. And as soon as the blog post goes live around 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, I will add a link to the video here, so you will be able to, if you're interested in going back and taking a look at the cardstock cuts or any of the information on the card, you can definitely easily go do that tomorrow. And there we go. Okay, so the inside is going to be all done here. When I've embossed a card front like this, the entire card front, I usually flip it over and use my bone folder gently on the back of it to get a good crease on it, so that I hopefully don't smash down the embossing too much on it. So that's it for today. So that is my card. So this is the one I made ahead of time as my sample. This is the one I made here today. And I definitely inked it a little bit darker on the flowers. I can see here when I'm comparing the two side by side. But again, it depends sort of on the look you want. If you want it to be a little darker, you can add more color. Want it to be a little lighter, you can add a little less color. But again, the recommendation that I have is always start light and add more layers, rather than starting dark and then having it be too dark and then you're unhappy. So, all right. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you all being here. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I will plan to be back on my YouTube channel live around 2 o'clock Eastern time on Friday, and then back on Facebook live around 2 o'clock Eastern time next week, Tuesday. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, I'll be posting all the details on my blog tomorrow. Don't forget celebrations going on. It's a great time to join. There's a great joining promotion going on. So if you have questions about that, let me know. I would be happy to chat with you about it. We have a great team, and we'd love to have you come join us. So let me know if you have questions. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will chat soon.